Hello and welcome to another Not Chilly podcast. We are back with another film discussion with the amazing Josh. And today we talk about the film Spiderman Homecoming, and we go all over the place talking about films that we think are in the spectrum of this film in particular. So, let's do this. Thanks very much for being a part of this. Well, you know, I've got what's that game called? Fallout Shelter? Just gotta check my... No, I was just gonna look up Spider-Man Homecoming.
Spider-Man?
Which is, I don't know why I'm looking that up. It just comes to me.
What the actor's name is, maybe?
I just want to look up the whole thing. Spider-Man.
Chris Hiddleston. Hiddleston.
Is it actually?
No, that's the guy that plays Loki.
Oh.
That about 4 hours ago I said I can't remember his name.
And no one's gonna get the reference. Nice. Ooh, 7.5 on Metacritic.
It's a solid 8.
Also 73%. I think it's a solid 8, but we're giving away all our feelings on the matter. But then again, it's not really, we're not a freaking review show. We just talk about...
If it was a cat, I'd rate it at Tabby.
Tabby?
Yeah.
What's the top of the scale?
Tortoiseshell.
Sorry, jeez.
I can't say that. Our previous cats were Tabby, and they were...
Did you have a cat called Tortoiseshell?
No, Juno is a tortoiseshell.
Is that a type of cat?
Yes, it's a type of cat.
Not something that an animal has on its back that swims.
It's, tortoiseshell, the pattern?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. She's a tortoiseshell.
But is that a type of cat? Or is that just a type
It is a
of
type
color?
of it's like the cat version of a ginger. Like a redhead.
Yeah, right.
It's they are a genetic anomaly that can't be predicted.
Correction there, by the way. That was awesome.
What?
No. You spoke to it's a slip of the tongue.
Ginger kids are evil. I saw a documentary called South Park about this.
That's right. Full.
No, I'm sure they have souls. I'm sure they do.
And they...
Yeah, it's very similar basically in cats, and they are genetically different. It's not just a color pattern; they are behaviorally different. It depends on who you ask. Like, I've spoken to one person about it who runs a cat shelter or something, and she said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Whereas I've spoken to a couple of vets about it, and they said, "Yeah, that's right." So,
I could be talking about that to my sister because she is a vet and she can tell me about all this kind of funky cat business.
Yeah, they're cool. They're cool cats.
People who like them, because
no, they're objectively cool.
They are
tortoiseshell cats are like James Dean. Great. You might like him, you might not like him, but it doesn't mean that he's not cool.
I still think that...
I'm totally unbiased there.
You are totally biased, but I'm
totally
also
unbiased.
Totally not okay to speak about it because I've never owned a cat. I don't plan to. Not because I hate cats, because they hate everything.
You want something needier in your life.
Exactly. I want to come home and I want to feel loved. I need a Tamagotchi.
No, see, that's the total disconnect that people who have dogs think that cats are doing. You do come home and feel really
you
loved.
do to a certain degree
just,
until they get bored of you and then they slash at you.
That's not what happens.
Is it not?
No.
Okay.
Don't get bored of you.
I literally saw you like a few minutes ago about it. Your grumpy cat attacking.
No, she had legitimate grievance. She wanted to go out today and she was kept inside all day.
So I need an animal that doesn't have any feelings other than happiness.
Yeah, see, that's like owning a lobotomized person.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't want a lobotomized person that's just, oh my god, you're great and this is fantastic all the time. I want something that's like me, that is going to be like, okay, like I've socialized enough with you today. I want to do my own thing. Cool.
You know what? I actually do.
And something that can clean itself and bury its own shit.
A good dog can bury its own shit, and it can shit in appropriate places. Also, a good dog, when you leave it out and about, won't kill native wildlife. Just saying.
Yeah, so you have a cat that's, incompetent of doing so.
Then what do you do with all the other cats that aren't?
That's not my problem.
Yeah.
I haven't poorly raised an animal.
Yet.
I've well raised an animal.
Yeah, right.
I have raised an animal well.
Oh my god, and Wiki, Donald Glover comes up before Robert Downey Jr. I mean, that's not a big deal, but it just makes me go like...
He's definitely not getting paid as much.
Yes. God. Let's have Robbie Downey Jr. money. That would be...
Unless it's in alphabetical order by first name.
No, starts with Tom Holland.
Who's that?
I don't know. Some guy. Probably not a big player in the film. So we're talking about Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yes. Or as Tom Redder would say, Spiderman.
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 Really? Does he actually say it like that?
Mr. Spiderman.
This is going to be a great tester to see if he listens to the podcast.
No, it's like, haven't you ever heard his...
No?
You've never had that conversation with him?
No.
It's very funny that if you refer to superheroes, if their last name was Spider-Man, if someone's name was Spider-Man, it wouldn't be pronounced Spider-Man, it'd be pronounced Spiderman. Because that's how we pronounce those words.
Yeah, right.
And yet, for the superheroes, we call them Spider-Man. And so he just says, like, imagine if we all referred to them as how we would pronounce the last name. So it's like Superman, Batman.
Oh my god.
There are people called Bat in Australian history. Like
No, I get you.
Batman
I get
is like a well-known name. It's not pronounced Batman. It's pronounced Batman because that's how it's pronounced. So yeah, Spiderman.
No,
I've always
knowing
found it
Tom
really
is
funny.
like all about linguistics and etymology, it makes me listen to that and go, yeah, okay.
Oh, you're the Spiderman.
Yeah,
Mr.
no.
Spiderman.
And that's why we have such great conversation. Well, like I hope we have great conversations because what happens is that Tom...
Who, you and Tom?
Yeah.
No, he
hates
it's not what he tells me, but...
Play into my anxiety, you asshole. and we have conversations and then he'll like... Because he loves... like words and stuff like that, and he'll say like a sentence which makes so much sense, but he'll say it with a couple of words, and I just like stop him right there and be like, "What does that mean?" And he's like, like it just like he likes explaining to me, but it like drops his rhythm, like and someone's like, "I'm on a roll, I'm talking. Okay, now I've got to stop and explain that one fucking word. You couldn't understand it via context." I'm like, "Yeah, I could understand it via context."
It'd be good if like you could footnote conversations.
No, my memory doesn't let me do that. No, it doesn't at all. I'm gonna do what I said.
Let me just come back to 1A.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Okay, the word that I said that you don't know what it means, it makes the rest of what I said not make sense. Would have been very helpful if at the time you had asked me. That would probably be the response most of the time. What is this?
Nothing. I'm not doing anything.
Red Bull.
Yeah.
It's so bad for
Can
me.
we first talk about... So we got Spider-Man going. Spider-Man, sorry. We watched the movie, but we did something more important at the beginning of this. I think it's really, really revolutionary for us. We ate healthy food. I know that you generally eat healthy food, but can I just say, I'm proud of us. Celery, hummus, you had the French onion dip, you had carrots, you had... like some healthy bread that...
No, that wasn't healthy bread. But yeah.
But you didn't have a lot of it.
I didn't have healthy bread, but it's Rosh Hashanah, and I had Rosh Hashanah bread.
And you're
I was just being a 1/100th decent Jewish person.
Yeah, no.
Because I should have been at synagogue if I was a decent Jewish person. But
shouldn't have said that, because we could have gotten away with it. No one knows the date.
Well, it's Rosh Hashanah. But they won't know the date anyway, like, unless they're Jewish, so... Because it's like a moon calendar.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Man, we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, before there was, It was a while, around for a couple of thousand years before,
All right, this isn't about a boring history. This is about really important stuff. Spider-Man.
And you're the one that brought up healthy food.
I know.
What is more boring than healthy food?
I'm proud of us. I think this is great.
And yet you undermine it all with the Red Bull.
Yes, because I'm tired, and I know that Stu might come over. We should probably call him, by the way.
Totes.
Weird to get him on the phone now.
No.
No, okay.
So, Tom Hiddleston.
Tom Holland.
Tom Hiddleston. Tom Dutch.
So, let's, not rewind, but let's get back to the show. We're talking about Spider-Man Homecoming, as we've previously said. We just watched it. Josh got the Blu-ray, realizing that...
Oh, yeah, I was waiting for it to come down in price on 4K Blu-ray.
Yeah, you were.
And I had missed it on the... I can't remember which site I use now. It's Real or Not or something.
Just a quick...
fake 4K.
If people want to know how much Josh likes particular quality of things... and I mean that, seriously, Dunkirk episode, which was probably 2 episodes or 3 episodes back now, listen to that because it's actually really interesting about the kind of really finessing details. Continue.
So they mastered the film at 2K because they shot it at 2.8K, which means all the visual effects are mastered at 2K, which renders a 4K Blu-ray basically
Obsolete,
useless.
right? Yeah.
So the thing that's interesting about that is that it means no matter how high resolution goes in the future, it's always going to be upscaled, that film. Like, that's a master. It's not exported out. It's film and printed and all, that's the great thing about old film. You can rescan it at higher resolutions and on and on and on. But, it's... I mean, 4K, you're probably hitting the limits on 35mm as far as I'm aware, but certainly on a big screen, on a TV, you could probably get it higher than that. But I was reading a feed this morning, actually, that a bunch of people were talking about 4K, and some of them were saying there's going to be no point until 8K comes out. I mean, what size fucking television are you going to need to be able to notice that? It's...
I mean, look at the transition into 4K. It's kind of ridiculous, right? When, how many years do you think it'll be before everyone gets a 4K TV? It's going to be like 5 or 6 years before.
It's going to take a while.
Yeah, because 4K is not like... Yeah. Yes, it does look better. Yeah, the HDR is pretty amazing. But really, does it take away from the story enough that it will make me go, I'm only going to watch that on 4K?
But it's just also the pipeline. The fact that most cinemas are still using 2K projectors worldwide.
Yeah.
When they changed over to digital, they mostly didn't change to 4K, as far as I'm aware. So
yeah,
there's no point in the pipeline. But on top of that, it's really the CGI. It's the rendering.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, because they need that in post to do it, but they're not going to render out in 4K. That's like...
No, yeah, I can't say the name of the film, but the CG house that we used earlier in the year, they were working on a big Aussie film and a few like really big shots, and they were initially requested to do the film in 4K. To do the shots, they were going to master the whole thing at 4K
for Netflix. I assume.
No. It's getting cinema distribution, as far as I'm aware.
Woo-hoo.
And when I saw what they were working on, it was just one of those things where you went, why are they doing this at 8 million pixels or whatever? When they could be doing it at 2 million pixels. It didn't as far as I'm aware, they ended up going with 2K in the end, because this is the difference, right? This CG house was talking that for the rendering of one shot, they'd have to upscale to getting another 4 servers, I think it was.
Yeah, there we go.
It was either 2 or 4, I can't remember.
To meet deadline or whatever.
Because keeping in mind they would have other jobs in their render queues and all this kind of stuff. To keep business functioning, that's what they would need.
Yeah.
And this is the stuff that, the layperson...
The layperson?
People who don't care about this stuff. It's what you say, just the everyday person.
Yeah.
That's the part that no one factors in. It's, everyone's going to the shop and buying 4K, but they're buying something that is digitally upscaled, that their TV and possibly if they have an Xbox One S, for instance, like they already have upscalers built into them. What we just watched was upscaled to 4K to fit my screen by my Xbox. Buying one that's mastered at that resolution, that's just been upscaled, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
It's pretty useless. So, yeah, it was quite funny, and just been waiting for it to come down because I didn't want to pay like $40 for a Blu-ray.
Right.
And
missing the sale by 2 days. Look at how nice you are to me, Josh.
And then, it turned out that it was mastered at 2K, so what did we do?
That was like one of my...
That was a $15 copy.
A prominent moment in buying it from JB Hi-Fi. I remember being like, oh man, I really wanted to watch it today because I've been eager to watch it. You've hyped it up. And so I was really keen on it. And then you're like, okay. I see you on your phone. I'm like, is he looking for a deal somewhere else to price match? It's like, oh no, it's okay. It was a 2K film. It's like, that's not what I was thinking, but sure. I'll take that as a win for me. So I got to watch it today, which was fun.
Yeah, for like less than half the price.
I got to watch it for free.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I was happy to buy it.
Yeah, of course you
I think
would.
it's pretty obvious my thoughts on Marvel, but I've always found Spider-Man to be really interesting. And he's interesting in the history of cinema. You know, a lot of the things that happened in the 90s, that was the point at which people realized, oh my God, we can do a superhero that isn't Batman or Superman.
But what is Spider-Man to you? Does he actually have any kind of... Do you resonate with Spider-Man at all?
I love Spider-Man. As a video game player and a film goer, I don't care for comics. I've tried.
Yeah, I've tried as well. I think
the writing's really bad.
You know, the Marvel like Ultimate Collection. Like they released these like blocks of like.
Oh yeah, like after a series is finished, or
no, I'm talking about like the stuff they used to put in newspapers.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Like, real dry, like really like...
That's what I used to do with Phantom. I used to buy the annual Phantom. See, that's the only comic I've ever gotten into, and I know that's meant to be like the most boring of all the comics, but...
Calvin and Hobbes.
Loved.
It's probably the only one I probably...
That's not really a comic, like that's a comic...
That's a comic strip, yeah, but that's more sketches and...
Well, yeah, whereas Phantom is the comic strips from Phantom would, if you... Basically, they were a book, but they just put in 3 to 6 frames at a time.
Yeah, right.
So then I would get the book as opposed to I never read them in the newspaper.
See, I also think that, like you say that, but I also think that there's eventually Calvin and Hobbes, like their season would actually lead up to a story. I'm pretty sure, because I mean he did it for 10 years, and so I think a few of his kind of seasons of work actually was telling of a particular era in Calvin's life or something like that, and so it would kind of lead up to a moment, but there would still be like, you know, like 3 to 5 like pictures or whatever, panels, thank you. So it's still like there were ones that didn't address the story, there were ones that were, and stuff like that. But I think that I think that you're right to say that they're very different mediums, and in the sense that the one's telling a coherent story from beginning to end. But there were, I think, exceptions to that rule in Calvin and Hobbes. But this isn't about Calvin and Hobbes. Did you ever read Calvin and Hobbes? Like, properly? I didn't read it all the way through, but, yeah.
No. Wasn't really my jam.
It always brings a tear to my eye whenever I read. Not whenever I read it, but there are just some of them in there just make me want to cry. It's so good.
Yeah, I've seen some emotional ones and stuff like that.
Happy cry.
Yeah. I haven't, but in terms of Marvel,
yes,
I've read sort of bits and pieces here and there, but never found it super interesting, whereas Spider-Man has featured throughout my media consumption in a big way. I don't remember very much watching the cartoon in the 90s, but I definitely did. But back then I was Batman. That was
you were Batman all the way.
I was Batman all the way, and then played video games. I think the first time I really got stuck onto Spider-Man was a game called... It was either called Amazing Spider-Man or just Spider-Man, and it was for PS1 and PC, and he fought Electro. No, the second one you bought Electro.
Are you sure you're not talking about Ultimate Spider-Man on PlayStation 2?
No.
Okay, because I did a review.
I then played that later.
Yeah.
So that was this was like, it was PS1, and I can't remember who the bad guy was in it. But yeah, PS1 and PC.
PlayStation 1, was it like really a side scroller?
No.
Really?
Yeah, it was 3D. In fact, I think Polygon... I thought that article was fairly rubbish, to be honest, because it was really... I think it spent a sentence on Ultimate Spider-Man or something, but it was going... the history of Spider-Man games.
Yes, I remember seeing that, and it was like they had the 3 pictures of the different Spider-Man games as they progressed to the new one, and I was like, you didn't show Ultimate Spider-Man?
No images from Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Which was not only beautiful, but also had amazing gameplay and a fantastic story.
I mean, like, it's obviously the only thing that kind of... I not killed it.
Venom.
Yes, that's so true. I forgot about that. I love that game, and the only thing that kind of hindered was that it needed more. Like they just needed more story, more game. But it wasn't because the story was bad and I didn't like it. It's just I wanted to play it more.
Yeah,
like that was it. And it
was fairly long, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, but like for an open world game, it wasn't.
Rhino.
Yeah,
let's fight Wolverine early in the game.
Yes, you did. That was heaps of fun.
It was those were the things that kind of made me really into it. And I missed the Spider-Man 2 boat because I bought it on PC because I didn't play console at that time. Skipped to PS2 and GameCube and Xbox original generation, and I was on PC. And despite the marketing and everything being identical, it was a completely different game developed by a different house. Not a port. It was an absolutely different game. So you get into it, it's not a big free roaming Manhattan. It's blocks of Manhattan that you can sort of snake through sections of.
It's like the 3DS version. I think I played the 3DS, or like a game, DS version or something of a Spider-Man game where you're like, obviously they're not going to take the PlayStation 2 or 3 at the time or whatever it was up to and make it into work on a DS.
Yeah.
But it was definitely just like, why did you even brand it as
the same thing?
Yeah.
It was shocking, which is why actually.
Oh, here we go. Story time. Story time with Josh.
I eventually got a GameCube.
Yeah, Spider-Man 2. That's what the case he's holding right now.
We're on GameCube.
That's pretty cool. We should play it. We should do like a Let's Play kind of thing where we play, and you've actually suggested this, and I'm the one that said, well, we can't see it, so.
Yeah. I'd definitely like to check that out a bit more, but I think I'd probably play that a bit and then go, so what about the PlayStation 4 game?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, that's my history with Spider-Man.
Well, for me, I never really watched the comics. I watched the TV show a bunch. I didn't really... See, I have a really horrendous memory. Like, I retain information fairly well. I just don't have access to it. And so I need, like, visual prompts or like... You know, like the moment you start a sentence about something we did together, then like I get a vivid flashback and I'm there.
Yeah.
But I can't generate that myself.
I have that with Monkey Magic.
There you go. Right, I have that with all of my life.
Right. I have it with a bunch of... But Monkey Magic was the most recent experience I had of it, where the way I always described it is someone's reaching into your brain and ripping neurons to the front. Yeah. Because that's honestly what it feels like when a deep memory comes back that you had no reason to access or anything like that. And I saw something on a TV and there was this like guy as a pig and all this, and I just went, what? Like, you know, Breath of the Wild when he walks to a spot and then it goes, oh!
Yeah.
He gets taken back to a memory. It's like, oh! Yeah, like that. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, for me, it's kind of a bit like that too. Oh, no, because it happens to me often enough. That's basically how I function. So I have this like history with Spider-Man where I'm like, I played the video game. I kind of enjoyed it. I kind of resonate with the Peter Parker character. I really enjoyed the Bryan Singer films. You know, like
Sam Raimi.
Sorry, that's
Bryan Singer, slightly different director.
Yeah, true. Oh, yes, slightly different controversy. Not that Sam Raimi has any controversy, but I did enjoy what was Tobey Maguire version of Spider. I didn't love it. Like I wasn't like I really loved it because it was like the first kind of like live action Spider-Man. I was like, whoa, cool. And I remember, and then suddenly I realized that I used to wake up and watch Cheese TV and I used to watch Spider-Man all the time because I started being like, yeah, but that's a reference to Mary Jane and that's a reference to Elektra. And I started realizing that I've actually ingrained in the back of my head, I actually watch a lot of Spider-Man because I love like not that I've never been, we talked about this while watching the film. I've never been like wanting to be the cool kid in school, but I was always in the outcast group. It wasn't even just in the nerd group. We were this amazing group of friends. Each of us were weirdos in their own...
They called it Peots group.
That's right. That's what they call it now. No, we all disbanded and we're all like weirdos in our own respects, you know, and we're all, it's like some of us are part geek, some of us are like part like bully, goth, like it was just not it was a mishmash. And so I never really seeked like the cool kids. And to be honest, there wasn't a big disparage, like the cool kids weren't assholes or anything. But I certainly resonated with that kind of vibe of being the kind of outcast and kind of being the weirdo and being a bit off place, and so I felt like that, and so I kind of resonated with him as a character. New York for me has like a Woolloomooloo vibe, which is where I grew up. I grew up in that kind of housing commission, kind of like poor, and not to try to say that like I was completely screwed or something like that, but like I grew up around that kind of world, you know, crime and
he's also from Queens. Which is
that particularly bad, or I don't know myself.
Queens historically is a lower socioeconomic end of
there you
the
go.
New York scale. So it's across the water from Manhattan, same as Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like he lives in Manhattan.
No.
He lives in New York, and it's in sort of a different area. So and as he is depicted most of the time, like they're not really financially okay.
No,
which
that's
was
right.
kind of a weird thing with that Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 movies with what's his name?
I never watched them.
You didn't see them?
No, I got told to Andrew Garfield. I never did, and I got told, don't waste your time. What do you think? Happy to do a comparison. I do love Spider-Man.
I don't think you should not watch them. Particularly the first one. The first one was entertaining enough, but it was just
What did it mean?
wasting a fucking... It's not what it missed, it's what it had. It was an origin story.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
we all know
the
this.
first hour and a bit was... and then they fast-forwarded. The ending is so atrociously bad.
good.
Where basically, near the end of the film, he's reaching that point where everyone's like, oh, that pesky Spider-Man, he's so annoying and he ruins stuff, which is that awkward phase, which is what Spider-Man has, all the way up to the beginning of Spider-Man 2 in Sam Raimi's trilogy.
Yeah.
And in this film, you see him doing all the destruction. You don't really see the response to it. You see that people are starting to like him, but there has to be that awkward phase. So Spider-Man, it's part of who he is.
That's right.
While he's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man as opposed to an Avenger, right? So
He needs to get kind of a certain level of maturity in him. Oh no, to finish up the story. So, without going into too much, so I resonated with Spider-Man in that particular way. I realized that I kind of had connections to the story of Spider-Man, and also his kind of awkward, his awkward humor onto things where here it is, his awkward nervous humor to things. I come across as I don't know you tell me, but I've never been like kind of that kind of cocky, confident joke teller. I don't, I went through a phase in life when it comes to joke telling where I'm a lot more awkward than that. I used to seek people to laugh at me, and then it kind of changed into being like, well, with me,
right?
With the jokes, yeah.
You weren't a jester.
Well, because of the dyslexia, I always found that people laughed at me, not with me, because it would just be funny about the way I say something or the way I interpret something. I mean, things Piotr says is a perfect example of that. It's just me out of context is hilarious. And so I kind of went through a phase where I wanted people to laugh because I made them laugh, because I always liked making people laugh. And then I realized that that's never going to happen. I don't. Well, maybe in the future, but it's I'm not that kind of wit. I don't have that kind of cocky, confident wit about me. And then I just started to enjoy making people laugh, but not ever expecting it. That's where it became fun, and that's where my kind of dark sense of humor kind of comes about. Where I say a joke, I say something that's out of place to throw people off because I think it's kind of funny. And I think when people look at you and go, "Wait, are you serious?" That for me is a really hilarious reaction. And I always I don't ever take it too far. My point being is that I've always had a nervous, kind of giddy sense of humor, and I feel like that version, especially that version of Spider-Man, but Spider-Man in general has always been like that. The kind of geeky, nervous kid that he is actually funny. And the way they write him is really hilarious and way funnier than I am. But
yeah, when he's in the suit, when he's Spider-Man, he's always meant to ease into a really cocky, overconfident type of character who has maybe a 2% overinflation in his mind of what his abilities are.
Yeah,
I think that's always been a favorite thing about Spider-Man is that. The type of characteristics that he's taken from a spider give him this remarkable strength, and yet it's his will that is really the core strength that he has. The fact that he's a good person who wants to help is whatever version of the film that you see, that's the most important aspect of who Spider-Man is.
Which is kind of that's kind of the main arc of this particular film. To be honest, that's kind of, if you were to describe what is Spider-Man Homecoming, you would say that it's this arc of Spider-Man not being the suit, not being just the person who's super strong and who has like reflexes and all that. It's whether him as a person is worthy of being the protector.
Yeah, and I think it's about, the thing I like about the film is how much it's about balance and failure. He spends 90% of the film fucking up.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it any less rewarding or entertaining, but it's that thing of watching him become Spider-Man, so to speak, through, I mean, when you throw it into the context of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all that stuff, so that lesson is imparted to him. If you don't deserve to wear the if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
Which is given to him by Tony Stark. That's what Tony Stark learns in Iron Man 3.
That's right.
Which I think is a bit of a mess of a film, but it's...
I need to watch it again because I actually really liked it. I thought it was fun and enjoyable, and I thought it had, like Thor Ragnarok. I know Thor Ragnarok was like way funnier and way more like tongue in cheek, but it got you. Like it was kind of like a movie and then like a funny movie and kind of played on itself, and then suddenly they had these really kind of cool, amazing moments. I felt like that's what
They all feel like happy meals to me. This one doesn't, honestly. It really doesn't. That's why I like it so much.
Yep.
But yeah, Thor Ragnarok still felt like eating a lot of cotton candy.
Yeah, right.
Just, okay, yeah, this is fucking great. It's over.
Really?
Why is my stomach empty?
You didn't dig the Thor Ragnarok kind of feelings?
Yeah, it was a buzz.
But you said it was like candy.
Yeah, it wasn't. To me, there was nothing substantial to it. It was just, to me, but that's the whole franchise to me as a whole. It's except for the first Iron Man, and for me, the first Thor movie. Aside from that,
I thought it did it pretty well. I thought that the Thor Ragnarok kind of had it had heart to it, which I really liked. And
it had heart, but to me, they all feel messy because no one ever sat down when they started the franchise, as we discussed like ages ago.
Yeah, and Infinity War,
no one
which
ever.
is the first podcast we did together.
Yeah,
Continue.
No one ever sat down and went, "What's the tone of this franchise?" Like it went out the gate, sort of doing that quasi Batman Begins kind of set in the real world, believable thing, and then
tripped on some kind of imaginary magic rod and then just like fell into oblivion.
Yeah, well, I mean, it felt like as soon as they realized, oh shit, that's right, we have to have a big green guy. We've got to have, which is the film that seems to never be brought up again in this franchise. The
Hulk,
Incredible Hulk with
Edward Norton.
Yeah, that's a second movie in the franchise, as far as I'm aware.
I will try to investigate.
Second or third, something like that. It's early on. And then, then you have Thor and Captain America and all that kind of stuff. And I think when they realized they had to have gods and monsters and mutants at some point and all that kind of stuff come into it, they sort of morphed the tone and then tried to ride like 6 horses at once.
Holy shit. No, you're right, by the way, but I didn't see this. No. Oh, shit. Chronological order. Not. So it just... scrap that. I was like, oh my god, all the movies in chronological order? And I was like, Captain America, the first Avenger? What? That wasn't the first movie. Maybe my brain's fried.
Because it's set in the 40s?
Yes. And so I'm like, you little shits. No, I meant actual chronological. But it does say here, Incredible Hulk and Iron Man both came out in 2008.
Yeah. So... that's the...
Though there was technically, the other Hulk was before this Hulk.
It was, but as far as I'm aware, they haven't ever really said...
anything about it?
About it being related, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, yeah. Then again, because it was obviously... Anyway, yes.
So, anyway, that's just my feeling about the films in terms of...
Well, then it's nice
substantial feeling.
It's nice to chat up about this then, because I kind of want to do a Thor, like the first Thor movie with.
Thor is really fun. It's just, to me, that's it.
No, not the Thor Ragnarok. I'm talking about like you actually.
Thor, the first.
You enjoyed
Thor
the first Thor movie, yeah. Cool. So I kind of enjoy, because I know both our feelings, as you heard from that first podcast, or if you haven't heard it, listen to it. That we both have a similar feeling about Marvel Universe. We just we're over it. we're enjoying the candy of it. We enjoy the kind of like, ooh, spectacle. But when it comes to substance, it's mostly gone. So it's nice to pick apart good filmmaking in amongst that rubble that is, you know what we're talking about, right? The rubble of superheroes. So yeah, I'd love to dig into Thor, because if you feel like that's the case, I'd love to.
It's not like it's infallible or
of course
brilliant
not.
film, but I just like a lot. But this was the first movie since I liked the Avengers, the first one when I saw it, and then ever since, every time I've seen it, I've kind of gone, eh.
Yeah. Right. But you only watched this movie once. This is the second time you watched it.
Yeah.
Okay. What are your feelings the second time watching?
Just reinforced.
Okay,
really.
good.
Like, I was really surprised by how good it was when I saw it the first time. And I really liked that they looked at their timeline and went, okay, what can we pull that will make all of this kind of make sense? And to take, to have there be real impact from the first Avengers film, that sat really well for me. And it just felt like the most well-structured and put together Marvel film, despite it really being a Sony picture.
And one thing I will touch on as well, because it's something that you really like. I know you're going to be like, yes, and try to talk about it more, because it is like an important point, is that this wasn't the end of a world kind of circumstance. Yeah, they took down a plane and stuff like that, but really,
the stakes were really small.
Yeah, great, right?
Yeah.
Even Tony Stark comes in and is like, okay, this is small fry. Like,
yeah.
That's why I called the FBI. That's why we had this shit sorted. Because
it's what I wish Ant-Man was. It's what I wish Guardians of the Galaxy was. Yeah. It's what I wish all of those things, going all the way back to the first Iron Man movie. And Thor is a small movie.
It's contained in its own universe.
Yeah. So I just wish that when I saw Ragnarok and when I saw this, I went, this would be really awesome if they'd been doing it the whole time. But it's almost like, particularly with this one, it just feels as though they've lessened what's come before.
Right.
That it's, instead of them getting better and better in a way that strengthens the franchise, to me, it just sort of demonstrates that they could have done so much better from the beginning.
True, but though they kind of did the trick you can only do once in a film franchise, and that's to destroy the person's. I'm talking about Thor Ragnarok. They did that reset, which is we take away your hammer, which is your power, and then you are now inferior, and you have to build yourself back up again. So they reset the character of Thor, which is probably why it was rewarding. I mean, spoilers for Thor Ragnarok if you haven't seen it, but it was rewarding at the end for him to be like, I am the god of thunder. I have this power.
Are you the god of hammers?
Yeah, that's right. That's the brilliant line. That's like, oh man, I just enjoyed that film. Sorry, I can reel into that for later. And maybe we watch it
again. Overhyped for me as well.
Yeah,
that would be a major factor. I was, and I stopped watching Black Panther.
I never watched
Got
Black
about
Panther.
An hour into it and got bored.
Oh, jeez.
It's just 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, it's by the numbers. Yeah, so anyway, that's how I feel about sort of the positioning of this film in the franchise. To me is
done well.
Yeah, it's done really well. And this is, honestly, I would say, since the first Iron Man, this is my favorite Tony Stark performance as well.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it? Like, there was a lot of, there wasn't necessarily a lot of hard-hitting emotional moments, but it was nice.
As I said, I just wish that the tone of this film and Thor Ragnarok had been the tone the whole way through, because it just hasn't been. It's been a mess of, ooh, we're getting dark now. Oh, it's trying to be funny. Oh, doing this. And a lot of times, all that within one film, and so you just sort of see it and go, I'm sorry, are we supposed to be like really worried now, or is it funny, or what's you just get thrown around the place all the time. And so that's why I feel like, to me, none of these films have when you watch a Star Wars film, there's like key things that make it Star Wars. These films have never really felt like, except for the predictable flow of the films, they've never really felt of sort of a coherent franchise to me.
I wonder if they did the thing where, like Star Wars, if they were actually to make the Avengers films first, Avengers 1, 2, and 3, and then at that point spawn off into their own little, like, this is an Iron Man movie. Maybe they would have had that structure. Be like, this is Avengers and everything else is lesser scale.
No, I like the idea. It's as I've said ad nauseum, it's just the which this film doesn't have, the stakes aspect. You know, it's just that thing of with every single film, you reach a point where you go, why aren't the Avengers showing up?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's been always the problem. Like, you can't tell me that the events of Avengers 2 are not as important as what happens with the films in between 1 and 2, and yet Thor never shows up.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, or between 2 and 3, where does the Hulk go and why? And, like...
It's sad that we don't see that, because he's actually kind of... I like his character. The new version of him is actually clever.
He does a good job. But yeah, anyway, Spider-Man. He, Tom Holland...
Great role.
Does an amazing job.
It's how I imagine Spider-Man in so many of the comics, and sorry, not that I read the comics, but so many of the cartoon that I saw, and a lot of the video games, the way he's portrayed was very on point.
Because I really, really loved Ultimate Spider-Man, and that had, since I watched that had been the version that I'd always gone, that's my favorite Spider-Man. That's my favorite Peter Parker, because those sections, I think near the beginning of the game, like, you don't have the suit yet and stuff like that. You're just kind of going around as Peter Parker
and stuff.
And so this to me was the first time that on the screen the Peter Parker felt the way that Ultimate Spider-Man Peter Parker felt. And I really, really loved that, and it felt like a comic book movie. It didn't feel like it was trying to be super realistic and serious. It was just being a Spider-Man movie, and I think it's really tightly put together, I think.
So when you take Spider-Man to his core, I mean, what is he? He's a really young teenager, as we find out, 14, turning 15 in this film.
No, he's 15.
Oh, right, because he was saying,
are
you 14? And he's like, I'm 15.
He says, you're a 14-year-old boy, 15. No, you don't talk back. The adults are talking.
That's right. And that's the film. He has real 15-year-old boy problems. He worries about school. He's a smart kid. He's distracted about with this big responsibility in life that he has to battle between. But also, his immaturity about being Spider-Man is very prevalent. So he clearly clearly needs to be a more mature superhero, because he's not. He just likes it because it's cool. I'm a part of Stark Industries. I want to be an Avenger.
It's not just that. It's also he genuinely does have, in that montage, he wouldn't stop and give the old woman directions. He wouldn't do things like that if all his real focus was helping people.
No, he has that. Of course, that's what makes him a good superhero, because he has that, but he hasn't matured past the point where he, like, when you take up any profession, and you go and you're enjoying it, you're loving it because you're doing this thing that you really enjoy doing. And at any point in anyone's career, there's those jobs, or there is that period of time where you're like, oh, fuck, I'm over this. This is hard. This is taxing. This is difficult. Whatever that job is. I mean, we're talking superhero scale, very different. But that premise, and that's kind of the evolution of, like, when you see that in Tony Stark's character, he's just like, you don't understand that a superhero is a real responsibility. It isn't this.
Well, invulnerability becomes normality. That's right. And for him, I mean, that's just the thing about Spider-Man is he's a suit mutant hybrid in terms of abilities and what makes him what he is, versus like Tony Stark is
human.
Is in a suit.
Yeah.
And his superpower is his intelligence.
Which is funny because it's like kind of Peter Parker is also super, super smart.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing. This version of Spider-Man, what I really like is I never really felt this in any of the other cinematic ones, where aside from, and this is because we see him at such an age. Mm-hmm. So Sam Raimi's one, it's more about he finishes up high school and he goes into college and all that kind of stuff. And I think that the Amazing Ones, I'm pretty sure, is in college, or at least that's when it's focused or whatever, something along those lines. This is the first one where he really feels like a kid. And the other thing I was saying as well is the school feels real. That's
Yeah.
one thing that really hit me. Felt like a really natural, realistic school as opposed to some hyper sort of realized, hyper like over dramatized.
Almost sterile. Kind of like
Not just so, but like there's the jocks and the this and the that, and you see that because at American schools apparently like that's really a thing, but you also see that there's a complex variety of stuff like the girl that he likes, Liz, she is she's pretty and athletic, but she's also like into sort of nerdy kind of things, and it's really sort of a more diverse perspective on what high school is really like.
That's right.
Because unless you were a total like douchebag, you weren't one thing in high school, in my opinion anyway. You couldn't be nailed down. I mean, the entire point of it is that you're like finding out who you are and all that kind of shit.
There's also the difference between remembering high school and being in high school. Because if I remember high school, I remember the drama kids, I remember the dance kids, I remember the musicians, and I remember us geeky nerds. Of course, I remember us geeky nerds as being this weird, diverse group of people, but of course the drama students would be the same. Of course the musicians would be the same. Of course the, like, people are complex and they're developing and they all have different, race, ethnicity, sexuality, like...
And they know each other and they talk to each other. I remember there was some, like, absolute fuckwits I was at school at, but one thing that always stood out to me was when you ended up with them one-on-one, they'd be just utterly different people because when they weren't in the pack mentality, they were a different person.
Yeah. Something it takes like a decade to grow out of, hopefully.
Well, I'm sure for a lot of people, but
yeah.
It's so I that's the thing that stood out to me a lot with this film as well, was that the whole dynamic of being at school felt really realistic, and the apathetic teachers and just sort of the
human
humdrum
teachers as well. Like, they're not even just apathetic, but they were like that.
Not all of them were apathetic, by the way. Science teachers seem to be like pretty into it and stuff, but the gym teacher and the shop teacher.
Oh wait, am I thinking of the wrong term for apathetic? Describe apathetic for me.
Having no care.
Oh right, no. So I was thinking the opposite. Like, they're kind of like not that they had care, but they all seem kind of rounded. Like, especially the person taking them to
Oh, that yeah.
He was
amazing. But that's the thing. They're diverse. I love the gym teacher though. When he leaves detention, no, come back. Or the man. At my school, actually, the like sharp, as they say in America, but the D&T teachers were like always like these old dudes.
Oh really?
Like
I had some pretty young. With PE teachers is what I'm talking about.
No, DT. Design and technology. They're like woodwork. And
woodwork. Okay,
when they're like doing the. Don't stick your hands near the blades or whatever he says without looking. Anyway, so while I'm talking about that aspect, I just already mentioned the school feels really realistic to me. But the thing that stood out most to me about this version of Peter Parker is in the first hour of the film, or the first like third of the film, the formula that's been used for the previous franchises has been Peter Parker tries to do his best, fails to show up, makes promises, fails. This happens a couple of times in this film, but the interesting formula is he tends to be bailing on things before they happen, and it's a mixture of his I need to be ready for this at any time. And what that to me builds up is, aside from him just being flaky because he's Spider-Man, he's out doing good, and there's that frustration of, guys, but if I told you what I was doing, you'd understand and you'd be supportive, or you'd be worried or whatever, but it's too dangerous to tell anyone you care about that you're Spider-Man, right? So the thing that brought to it to me was this concept that the, as he calls it, the Stark internship, or as he and Tony Stark come up with as a cover. Mm-hmm. The Stark internship, he sees this as a way out from his lower class life. Mm-hmm. Whereas he's smart enough to get any job.
Yeah.
He's smart enough to do any of that stuff, and this is a realistic...
and also he's a white male. Sorry. Just
that aside.
Sorry. Continue.
He can get any job on the basis of his intelligence, and
Yes.
he can have basically any career that he'd be interested in because he's mostly interested in science and engineering and things like that, and he could do that. And it's that thing of saying to a 15-year-old who has superpowers and like can hang out with the most powerful people in the galaxy, just be patient.
Yeah.
Because this will all be worthwhile once you've graduated and you're set up and all that kind of stuff. And it's a situation that you don't have to deal with any of the other Avengers, right? They're all adults. Most of them have been formed through their career, formed through their education, or like Thor, for instance. That's why he's interesting, because he's immature, because he's just a man-child, because he's royal family. And
that's right.
All that kind of stuff. So, and that's where Stark and Thor and stuff, they all clash and all that kind of stuff. And Stark, in the chronological order of it, in this film, has really just achieved that point of being more mature.
Yeah.
So I think that there's... I think the thing that they approach really, really well is this idea that he can't see any other way out of his neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a good guy, so you sort of, if you extended it, you can imagine that character would want to make a better life for Aunt May and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that he really feels that, and that's why he's so overeager and so wants to do all this stuff, when all you have to do is just do okay for the next 3 years, and then go to university and do all that stuff. The Avengers will take you in 6 years.
But can I also say, he's also a 15-year-old boy.
But that's what I said. Like
he's gonna make those mistakes. He's going to,
of course,
yeah.
But I mean, that's why it's so selfish of Tony Stark back in Captain America, Civil War. That's why he shouldn't have involved him.
Yeah, that's true.
It's utterly irresponsible. And he bet on as he says in this film, if the captain would have wanted to lay you out, he would have.
Yeah,
So you're betting on the fact that nothing's going to go wrong and that they won't want to hurt someone they can hear is young. You're going to bet that. So I mean, that becomes interesting, right? Like, I'm talking about it enough. It's complex enough and textured enough for there to be something to talk about. But the way that his character is developed, to me, felt fresh, because that was clearly different to the previous outings. With the Sam Raimi one, it was the same formula every time. He wasn't preemptively avoiding things. He was committing to stuff and failing, committing to stuff and failing, committing to stuff and failing. Whereas this is more textured to me. He's avoiding doing anything, and he's dropping out of things, and he's leaving stuff because he sees that as a responsible pathway to avoiding failure to achieve the things that he wants or feels that he needs to achieve. And then it's not until he is basically shot down by Stark, not at the ferry point, but after the ferry, before that ferry point in the film, where he, after he's rescued from the water.
Yeah,
after he's rescued from the water. That's the first time. Yeah, and it's that thing of no one wants to talk to him between that point and the ferry point. And
which is his mistake, which is Tony Stark's mistake.
Oh, totally. You don't ignore a confused, ambitious teenager.
Yeah.
With superpowers. He's going to try and do his best.
Of course.
And that in this context is a problem. Yeah. And so for that act of the film, between when he gets saved out of the water by Stark and when before the ferry happens, that's the point where he starts doing that thing of committing and failing, committing and failing, committing and failing.
Yeah.
Whereas before he's avoiding commitment at all to do it. And then I think that romance aspect that runs through it is also another thing that wins it as well. It's that he keeps having these small failures, and then that hits him so hard at the end when Liz is leaving and what she says to him, whatever happened, I really hope whatever you're going through, you sort it out. And she means that because she's been hurt by him, and she doesn't think he's a bad person.
No.
Quite clearly, and then she's out of his life.
Yeah.
And he'll never see her again.
And
so
that's that beautiful little sneak in.
Oh, MJ.
Yeah.
Coolest MJ.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Yeah, so that to me is why it really distinguished itself from the other Spider-Mans. It's not just his performance, it's not just the fact that he is such a good Peter Parker and such a good Spider-Man. Whereas, I do feel that I'm sort of in that, it's a bit of an annoying thing these days, but there's that camp about the Sam Raimi ones are going, he was a great Peter Parker and a terrible Spider-Man. He never felt like a cool Spider-Man to me. He felt like a kind of a douchebag, but that being said, Spider-Man 2 is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite action films of all time.
I loved Spider-Man 1 and 2. I like both of them.
Hated 1 and 3. Couldn't stand them.
I really enjoyed 1 and 2, and I still do. I watched them not super recently, but in so far recent memory. But I will say that Spider-Man there is like, how would I describe him? He is like introverted, anxious, and then this current Spider-Man, obviously Spider-Man Homecoming, is kind of not entirely introverted, but kind of almost a little bit extroverted, anxious.
He can socially function,
yeah,
and that's the thing that I've always found made me more annoyed than empathetic towards Peter Parker in the Sam. Certainly in the first one. But I will also say one of the main reasons I don't like the first one is the level of CGI that I know it sounds weird, but whereas for the second film they invented the Spidey cam, and that was a huge visual difference. Like, that's why you see those extraordinary shots in that film, because they were literally swinging a camera through Manhattan.
I also see that as like when someone has taken the bullet when it comes to experimentation. Suddenly someone has like picked up the reins and be like, okay, let's try and make a Spider-Man movie. This is going to be crazy. And then they did the 3 and people were like, yeah, it was pretty good. We liked it. And then suddenly these guys are like, okay, off the back of that shit, what did they do wrong? And let's Yeah, I mean, that's where they went so wrong. If you watch the Amazing Spider-Man films, that's what you'll see. As soon as you watch the first film, you just go, why the hell am I seeing this Origins shit again? Yeah.
Why am I watching this whole thing from the start again?
We all know.
I've seen this, and that was a major complaint. And then the second film, as far as I'm aware, was made under a deadline to do with copyright. Maybe it was the first one.
Oh, I think you told me.
Yeah, one of them was made it was like shortly before the copyright reverted back to Marvel, and
so
Sony
like, quick. Yeah.
But that film, the second one, is appalling, except for like a couple of scenes. There's a scene
that's depressing.
There's a great scene in it to do with what it costs to be Spider-Man, and aside from that, it's really long. It's like 2.5 hours or something longer, maybe.
That one scene,
and that is really well done. And that's kind of the only moment that I felt something watching that film. But yeah, I think that the thing about Sam Raimi's ones are that they were really going out there and trying something no one had done yet. The closest thing you can really think of is, it's filmmakers like George Lucas, to be perfectly honest, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, that made that film possible, because everyone was sort of looking back and going, well, if they've done that, and 2 years, a year or 2 years, I think it was 2000 or 2001. I thought it was 2001. But
talking about the original Spider-Man?
Yeah, I thought it was 2001.
Find out.
But it was, it was interesting to see in the wake of Star Wars Episode 1 how CG had been dealt with that film. It was so ambitious.
2002.
Was it 2002?
According to this.
That would be accurate, I'm sure. So I think that, I watched on VHS, I think.
Oh my
DVD
God, really?
Or something. I can't remember. I would have seen it on DVD.
Spider-Man. Yeah, you know what? I can see why you like that jump from Spider-Man 1 to 2, because I forgot that, what was his name? Octavius was in Spider-Man 2.
Oh,
and he was a great villain.
Yeah.
He was cool.
Yeah.
And terrifying, but not...
with understandable motives.
Yeah.
And also he was a good guy taken over by an evil thing because of his... I think actually we spoke briefly about this in the...
Which podcast?
Infinity War
podcast. Which you should listen to.
Talking about how ego can undermine a character and make them... So he continues his experiment in Spider-Man 2 when he shouldn't, because it's his ego. I can control it. He's saying, I can control it. And that's what causes him to do that. And that's what causes, at the end, he still takes responsibility for himself once that little chip that's controlling him is destroyed. I watched it only recently, and I just sat there going, fuck, this is so good.
Yeah, it was cool.
And yeah, so I think it's interesting because now you've got 3 versions of cinematic Spider-Man to compare against each other. But this one, he's my favorite Spider-Man.
Can I make also another comparison between the first and the third type of Spider-Man movie, which is obviously the first being Sam Raimi, this one being Homecoming. I think there's also a difference between the first set of films was like we're in the head of Spider-Man. The second, the last most recent set of films, or I guess, is there a second Homecoming? There is, isn't there? Or is it coming? Like this version?
Oh, I think his next film is Avengers 4.
Oh, okay, right.
He has to come back to then do the next Spider-Man movie, as far as I'm aware.
So this more recent version is like we're watching a Spider-Man, and we're getting to enjoy Spider-Man himself, whilst the first series was kind of like we are in the head of Spider-Man. We get to feel how cool is this? This is fun. This is exciting. Whilst in this one, we're like, oh my god, how cool is that guy? How cool is Spider-Man? Look at what he can do. So I feel like that's kind of why I enjoy the first film, because Tobey Maguire's character is a little bit more passive than comparatively to this character, who seems to be a lot more like aggressive and more, I want to get out there and I really want to push it.
I think that's why, like, to me, but the thing is, that's not the way Spider-Man behaves in those Sam Raimi films. Mm-hmm. And that's
why they're not.
There's no overlap. I never felt that there was an overlap. He puts on the suit and it could just be a different person.
Yeah.
That's what I never liked about the Tobey Maguire ones.
Oh, I
think
that
there was a disconnect between who he was as Peter Parker and who he was as Spider-Man. Whereas in this one, it is very clear the connection. It's Peter Parker, and he puts on a thing, and his personality
in a jacket.
Well, his cockiness is present, where he's obviously quite sort of like shy and all that type of stuff. He's not afraid to be, a voice in class. He's not afraid to be number one. He's not afraid to succeed and do well and to be heard. But he's still a nervy, like, socially awkward person who then becomes, kick-ass when he gets into the...
But he still stumbles into that nerdy, awkward person when he makes mistakes as Spider-Man.
Totally, and you do see that more, though, in sort of like in Infinity War, for instance. That's more happening in play in that, I think. When they get on the thing and he says, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm Peter Parker." I'm Doctor Strange." "Oh, we're doing our secret names. I'm Spider-Man." Like, that to me is that sort of, that kind of awkwardness being a bit bigger and stuff. But yeah, I think I really, really, really enjoy Spider-Man Homecoming.
What did you think about the villain?
Oh, fucking great.
I mean, that was a great actor. What was his name? I'm gonna look it up. The irony being that guy from Birdman. I love that. I mean, it's like, I'm sure this has been said a billion times over, but it is kind of...
it's going to be so annoying.
Do you want to try a guess?
Michael Keaton.
Oh, nice. Right as I got it. Nice. Well done.
He has also been Batman twice.
Yeah, that's true. No, he was... I mean, I loved Birdman, the film, but he was also... And then obviously, I'm not sure if this character is named Birdman.
I don't know. It's a vulture or something, isn't it?
Yeah, whatever. They never say it.
No.
I don't think. Or if they do, they might have make reference to it, but I don't remember.
Sorry, all those people out there that are yelling at us because we don't listen or we don't read comic books.
Yeah, sorry.
We don't care who he is. I don't know who he is.
The Vulture.
It is the Vulture?
Adrian Toomes / Vulture.
What does he look like?
Oh, the actual Vulture? Let me see. We might have to describe it.
Because I think people were saying, this is scraping the barrel or something.
I mean, even if it was cool.
He was so sweet.
Like, just his entrance when he first reveals the Vulture part of him, and he's just like, chink, when the suit comes out, and he's just...
It's funny because he's not that different from the bird guy in the Avengers team, but he's so much cooler than him. What's that guy's name? I don't know. Like,
bird guy.
Falcon.
Which bird guy are you talking about?
Falcon on the Avengers team.
Oh, yeah, no, he's heaps cooler than him. The character, the way they did the CGI, the way he moves and everything felt right. it wasn't blown out of proportion, though it was powerful, but he didn't seem like a superhuman.
But more than anything else, his motivations made sense.
His motivations made sense.
And they weren't world domination, thank fuck.
Yeah, he's just trying to make a business and fend for his family. And it wasn't even the sappy kind of way. Like, it was in that...
No, he was like... He was
look at the car he
misguided.
drove.
You know, there was
drove
actually...
Yeah, go.
Oh, yeah, he drove like
a fancy car, lived in a really beautiful house. He lived beyond his means.
Exactly.
Despite the fact
he
that
lived
it's
to the means that he had, you know.
rather than conserving his means and be like, okay,
which
I'm
was
in
the
and
whole
I'm out.
point.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I was listening to a talk today, this interview I shot yesterday with this guy who was in the FBI, CIA, and NSA. And one of the people that he helped take down was...
Osama bin Laden.
I think he had something to do with that, but
Jesus.
I think in some way. I can't remember. But what I do remember is that he helped in taking down the highest ranking traitor in CIA history.
Oh my
God. One of the interesting things about it was basically... so that guy was arrested and he'd been turning to the Russians and selling them stuff. And
Clever.
well, not really.
No, I'm joking.
When you sort of see how he gets taken down, you go, wow, he's...
What an idiot.
And he was...
Yeah?
He thought he was, you know, super smart and all this...
He probably was.
Stuff. Oh, no, he was a smart guy, but it was just... When intelligence becomes overcome by arrogance, and then the arrogance clouds the intelligence. And so he... when he gets sentenced, he says to the court when his children are in there, he goes into this full weepy mode kind of thing where he's saying, I did this just for my kids. Like, I did this for you, and I'm so and goes on about this stuff. Horrendously embarrassing. Traitor to the country. Sold out information that could have had people killed.
Yeah, for his family.
For $300,000 or something in total. And
oh, really?
And it was really interesting because the reporter who wrote the thing said, I think the judge it was who was doing the sentencing, basically everyone was there couldn't believe the way that he just guilt-tripped his children. You know, that he basically said, I'm here because I was doing this for you. For you. And as the writer of the story about it, the guy who wrote the book that covers it, says later on, he ended up basically getting his son to continue the spying.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he was using his son to take things and then get money back and take a cut or something like that. His son ends up getting sentenced. And it's sad because he had a really good career and stuff like that, but he was really, I need to make my father proud kind of son. You know, in that almost obsessive kind of way. No matter what my dad does, I have to make him proud of me.
Yeah,
like
my dad
shouldn't care about. Yeah, you shouldn't care about your dad's opinion anymore. is the point? But you know, it's emotional. So he does all this stuff, and then he gets sentenced and all that kind of stuff. And then the author says, Jim Nicholas, the dad, he said the only thing I'm certain about is when he wakes up in the morning, he thinks about Jim Nicholson, and when his son wakes up in the morning, I know that he thinks about others. And that's a really, really long way around of saying that that's how I feel about this guy, you know, the vulture in this film. He's doing these things supposedly for his family. He talks the whole time about his family, but it has that Breaking Bad thing going on where it's, but you're also emotionally getting a lot out of it. Yeah. Like, you're feeling powerful. You're feeling in control. You're getting money. You are gaining so much, knowing that if anything goes wrong at any point, it will cost your family. It won't cost you. It'll cost you everything, but it won't cost you anything near what it costs them.
Yeah.
It'll cost them it'll destroy their lives. And that's exactly what happens. And so it's that thing of, on the surface, understandable motivations. That's where his motivations initially come from. It comes from revenge. It comes from being spiteful. It comes from needing to support his family. But why didn't he do it? Why did he do it for 8 years instead of 1?
Okay. Speaking about Michael Keaton's character, one of the things I really wanted to talk about as well is one of my favorite scenes of his character in particular, and that was the car. Because so they get into the house and there's that awkward moment where he's like, obviously, it's a brilliant performance. It's a great reveal. It surprised me and it wasn't overplayed.
No, Tom Holland is amazing there.
Yeah.
Like that performance feels like an anxiety attack.
Oh yeah.
It just goes quiet. Everything, he can't hear anything.
He can't understand anything.
Oh my God, look how funny this is. Oh yeah, that's really funny. Like, it's
Yeah.
exactly what having an anxiety or a panic attack is like, where you're trying to continue functioning and yet you can't appear to be normal, but you're doing your absolute best.
Well, I guess it's
really well
pre-panic attack. Like, that's trying to not have a panic attack in its own self. Sorry, no, not that I know. I mean, not that I'm very experienced in that. But then there's that moment in the car, and Michael Keaton's character, so the Vulture, hasn't realized that it's Spider-Man yet, but he slowly starts to realize.
Yeah.
And you see him get more and more like he goes from the lovable dad to the kind of the man who's actually like the egotistical, want to control kind of dude, until she leaves the car and we already know that he knows. And then he turns, and the stuff he says in that moment is so good. It's such a good threat because it's also it's giving him an out.
The only thing I'll say is I don't like the shots that they choose for the back end of that scene.
Do you mean when it's like super close to his face?
No, that's the great stuff.
Yeah, right.
And then they do that like outside the windshield shot and a couple of other things. But the other thing is they chose to stay on Mike. They didn't give us enough Peter Parker, in my opinion, in that scene. There wasn't quite enough reaction happening. It was all Michael Keaton talking. Once we know what he's getting at, I wanted to see how Peter Parker was being affected a bit more.
Okay, I liked it. I liked where it was going because I was like, when is he gonna get it, or does he get it? Like, he's so close. And I also, because I feel like we had the Peter Parker moment in the house, and then it was the Michael Keaton moment in the car, and then I love hate. There's the moment with Peter Parker, and he's like, obviously he's now escaped the school and they've done that fight. He meets up with Michael Keaton's character in that warehouse, and they have this like standoff. I love the really wide shot. I love how it looks. I love that but then they broke it for me by cutting, and this must be performance or something, but they kept cutting from Michael Keaton's, like, two angles of Michael Keaton. It was profile, his face on, it was profile, his face on, his profile. And I was like, there's nothing more menacing than stay on one shot, slow track, then like...
That's... look, you don't know, as in...
No, of course not.
You as in we.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
we don't know, but to me, that smells of...
directors and performance. That's what it smells like to me.
To me, it smells like a director that has been asked to use multicam by producers so that they have more options in post, rather than him being able to pick his shot and stick with it.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Which happens a lot in these big movies these days. You sort of go, what was that unmotivated cut? What's this? What's happening here? What's going on? And it's that thing of, if that was a David Fincher film, that would have been one shot probably.
Yeah.
And it would have like slowly moved in. If it was a Spielberg film, it definitely, almost certainly would have been a single shot.
Yeah.
With cutaways to Parker, and that's what that smells of.
It was Nolan as well, who did a superhero film.
And exactly. And all of these directors' names that we're saying are incredibly decisive,
and they don't choose
directors.
to do these kind of films. They wouldn't do Marvel.
But everyone would love to see something.
Oh yeah,
you'd love to see their version of it that would make no money.
yeah, of course.
But that's the thing. It's like, those are all directors who have incredibly decisive styles, who can't be boxed in by.
And strong reputations.
Yeah, absolutely.
That they want to
Which
keep
is why they can't be.
Yeah, that's right.
Boxed in by studios to the point of being like, you haven't got enough cameras on this scene. I think, as far as I'm aware, they're doing the same sort of thing with Star Wars at the moment.
Right.
But Star Wars, with exception, like throughout, has never been a really like. It's had that the whole way, you know.
Do you mean multicam? Do you mean single cam kind of stuff?
It's had like multicam or over coverage or trying to do things, except like the first film had like nowhere near enough coverage. But that's a George Lucas, that's that's a Lucas style thing, and they've just sort of expanded on that with Star Wars. But that to me is a tiny sort of signature. Why did they change to that shot? Probably some, again projecting, but probably some marketing person saying you need to change a shot every 12 seconds, otherwise people stop paying attention. Some bullshit like.
Because that reminds me of the amazing, one of my favorite shots in most films was James Bond Skyfall, and we had what was that guy's character?
Javier Bardem's character when he comes down the elevator and walks towards James Bond.
One shot, slow. It sounded great, despite
Jaws.
Obviously. Yeah, that's right. It was Jaws, but it was intelligent and it was menacing and it was fascinating. It was so good, and it was not just because it was performance, it was everything. But that's what made it.
That's Sam Mendes is a highly decisive director.
That's correct.
Jarhead is one of my favorite films of all time, which I have just realized I don't have on Blu-ray.
You scumbag.
If oh my god, if they rescan a film as 4K, like that film is fucking gorgeous. It is stunning.
We'll do it. We'll watch it, and when you get the 4K, we'll watch it again.
Oh yeah, but they might not scan it. But anyway, that he's a highly decisive director, and in my opinion, Sam Raimi. So Sam Raimi, it's like you don't see any of those things in the except for the third one. The third one's a write-off because like the studio very clearly got heavily involved in that.
Yeah.
But the first two, particularly the second one. The second one is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movie to me. The first one feels like the studio's kind of all over it because they're worried
and budget.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, we had a gigantic budget. No, like I think 3 still holds a record for the most expensive US film ever made.
Looking this shit up. Go.
It was over 300 million.
Wow. If you're right, I'm going to.
And the comparison I always draw is they made the Lord of the Rings trilogy for 297 million. So money doesn't mean that it's a fucking good thing.
No.
And you look at that second Sam Raimi movie, and that to me has been the Sam Raimi movie where that is what Sam Raimi set out to make and successfully created. And I think that whether or not his mistakes he makes in the third one, which he's talked about more recently, but the second film to me is exactly what he set out to make, and it doesn't have, in my mind anyway, those things like that weird sort of cutaway shot. And anyone that's listening, this might sound like semantic or looking into things too much, but it's cutting unnecessarily, which is something I've done 101 times over in my own projects.
Yeah.
When you see how much it undermines things, and as a director, it's really hard to commit to a shot of something. This short film that we did last year, Staying the Night, that was, I felt that overall we were pretty decisive about our setups. And the only setup that took a long time was a really specific camera move that I wanted. And that's why it took ages, right? Because it was a difficult manual move on a jib. There was no electronics or machinery to it, and so it's that thing of when you go through and you pick your shots, when you don't have someone else there saying, "No, I don't trust you. Get more." You have that luxury, and you either have to fight for it, or in the case of like my work, your budget is not important to anyone, so no one's fighting you. So I think that's that important distinction of the artistry of it can be undermined. This is a hypothesis that we've created. It's not what happened.
Yeah, of course. We don't know. We weren't there.
But it smells like that. It does smell of that sort of studio interference kind of thing. There's no reason for the change in shot. And he's menacing.
Yeah, well,
he is menacing.
Right.
Michael Keaton is very good at doing menacing.
Yeah.
And
that was a great, like, if you kept it in that wide and you didn't even see their faces, it was still really good.
Yeah.
Like, it was already a really good sequence without those additions. So, I don't know. I always think to myself that it's got something to do with performance, but you got a really good point about, coverage, the way that,
I'd find it really hard to believe, considering how seasoned an actor Michael Keaton is,
oh yeah,
that there would be anything particularly at that sort of I don't know, maybe they shot that first. I strongly doubt it.
No.
But it's one of
Or
those
maybe.
things where you just go, he would have such a grasp of the character, and there's at no point does he seem out of character in the film. So I don't know. And again, not the type of budget where you're talking that, oh no, we couldn't get that line from Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
It's not a problem they're going to have. That's what it smells of. It smells of multicam to me.
Okay. No, that's completely fair. But I still really enjoyed that scene. I just thought that it lacked the balls. That's one of the things for me. I mean, like, I don't know. I keep saying this balls, but, you know, like, it lacked the kind of courage that some films had, and it had an opportunity to be courageous. Because I don't think that a film has to be, like, I think in the same way that an action movie that's all about your pizzazz and has, like, shots everywhere and it's all, like, like explosions and amazing spectacle, it also gets boring. I also think a film that's all about, like, that's really, like, striving to be, you know, like, to challenge cinema and to be really, like, ballsy in the way that they shoot. I think in that same respect, it's also kind of boring. I think that a good movie and a good director and a good cinematographer and a good editor get a moment in a film and they just they choose moments and then they really work it and then they leave it. And that's, you know, that's the example of Skyfall that I'm talking about. That's the example in many films with directors that we really love.
It's about being decisive. It's about communicating through the visual element and how do you want people to feel. And it's that thing of, you know, not cutting a shot is as important as cutting a shot. Any time that you make a cut, it makes people feel a way.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if it's an interview, it doesn't matter if it's a corporate video, it doesn't matter what it is, but cuts make people feel.
Yeah, and there's a massive difference between telling a story and feeling a story.
Totally.
And the editing process is quite a lot to do with feeling a story. Because the information's there. They could have cut 30 or 40 times or not made a single cut.
Well, it's like, I mean, it's that... So, yeah, I think it's good. I do. I think it's a really good film. I have to be honest. I'm really frustrated that I have to wait until after the next Avengers to see Tom Holland have a Manhattan Spider-Man movie. You know, it's we haven't had that yet.
Yeah. Is there anything that disappointed you about the film?
Not disappointed me, but it's more about
like obviously any major thing,
excitement about wanting to see things and they didn't happen. You know, this film is not. This is the interesting thing about this film, particularly visually. This is not a Spider-Man swinging through skyscrapers thing. This is Spider-Man running through a field. This is Spider-Man hopping from truck to car so that he can get somewhere quicker. This is not Spider-Man going at 250 kilometers an hour between buildings. This is not a Spider-Man that we're visually familiar with, and I think that is the aspect to me that's that frustration of I really want a sequel because I want to see Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Well, you know they clearly made this so that it would be a sequel, like the way like they purposely set it in a way.
Yeah, I mean, what's his name? Feig, whatever his name is, Paul, or I can't remember. Anyway, the guy that produces like all of the Marvel cinematic universe.
Oh, I didn't know.
He was the producer of this.
Yeah, there you go.
It slots right in. It really is. You know, that's exactly what it is. It stems from that. You know, the crossover of agreements of what they had. This was the fulfillment of the agreement between them taking Spider-Man for Civil War and then Sony getting to access.
Do you know what's going to be sad?
MCU for their film.
I think what's going to be sad is, as of Infinity War, there's a maturity that Spider-Man would inherently have, you know, gotten from being, you know, killed and reborn, and the stakes that were in that. And I really, they have to bring that in unless they just wipe his memory. They'll have to bring that maturity along with the next film. And if they do, it's kind of like you're missing, like that's a whole movie in itself. Just him with that, you know.
I doubt they'll have time to explore that. But this is the thing. Yes, that would be interesting. No, I don't think I want to see that film, and the reason is I want to see the sequel to Homecoming. I don't want to see the sequel to.
Yeah, that's my exact point. Is I don't want that to be involved in it. But now that I think about it, it's going to have to be, right. They're going to have to do.
Yeah, but they might do that in Infinity War 2 or whatever it's called. But look, we're speculating, and I think that
yes.
all I know is what I want to see is that Peter Parker in Manhattan. That's what I really want to see. I really want to see how they deal with moving through the buildings and doing all that stuff. And I know they're going to do it CG, almost certainly, because of how they made the Avengers films. But it would, be nice if maybe they did some kind of spider cam or something, the modern version of it. It'd be so sweet. Like actual film, like, digital or whatever. But like actual cameras swinging down through the streets and then CGing cars in and Spider-Man and stuff. So it looks like the timing is perfect and all that. That blew me away with Spider-Man 2. That's always been imagery that's never gotten out of my head, and that's been the appeal of the character in the video games for me. It's been that. It's fun to be Spider-Man.
Holy shit! I want to play that Spider-Man game. I'm not going to buy it because we both have a rule that we generally don't buy a video game that's just been released, because there's no point paying $100 for a game when it's going to be $40 in like 6 months. Yeah. It would just lose its hype, and no matter how good it is. I mean, look, we just saw, that's a few years ago now, but Uncharted 4 sitting for $2 for $20. $2 for $40 inside of a bin.
I mean, it's less that, more than, like, of course, there's the money factor, but it's that thing of with a back end to the year that is so insanely packed with games, I can't justify it.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just too much coming out.
It's gonna be Smash Brothers,
Pokemon, Smash Brothers,
maybe Red Dead if you can convince me well enough. Yeah.
Look, if you don't play it, we just won't talk for a month. That's your choice.
But then I won't have a podcast for a month. Damn it!
You can.
So about Red Dead. No, this is how I sell it. This is how I sell it to myself. I say I will spend that money because that means I get to hang out with Josh.
Honestly, there is no point in waiting for that game to come. I just can't see a reason why waiting for that to come down in price would be.
All right. Well, we kind of evidence.
It's going to be like GTA 3. It's going to be that game that everyone who plays games on console is going to have played. It's going to be massive. Just everyone's going to play this thing. You're not going to hear from people. They're not even going to have lives anymore. They're going to be playing Red Dead Redemption all day. Everyone's going to quit work.
That's going to be funny. And Laura will start playing video games and that kind of... Like, I'll come home and she'll be like...
She'll start having to dress like a cowboy for you even to pay attention. Oh my god, a cow! Oh, Laura, come on!
You tricked me, again. It's the 5th time this week.
Anyway, do you want, but I think it's going to be fucking sick.
Yeah,
Which is totally related to Spider-Man.
It does. Well, it relates to the time that we're talking about this. But, there's not much more to say. Like, I mean, what else is there to say about Spider-Man? Watch the movie. It's really good.
His friend is funny. I'd say that.
His friend's funny. All the characters in the film.
It's very textured. There's just stuff happening all the time that's enjoyable and quirky and fun.
And not trying to make a big deal of itself.
Yeah.
Like, I was going to say that when we were talking about the school and we're talking about the diversity in the school, like cultural diversity that existed, I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I didn't think of it because they didn't focus on it. They weren't like, oh, look, check out all this cultural diversity. I was like,
totally, yeah.
I was like, whoa, actually, this is really cool that you're introducing this kind of character, this kind of this.
But there was no, as you said, there was no deal made of it. Like the black guy that was on the debate. Whatever it's called, the team.
But it's debate.
Decathlon or whatever.
That's right, yeah. The trivia night, yeah.
Yeah, but he's not just an African American kid. He's an African kid. I think that things like really interesting decisions about that, and also the allowance now of there's this great, like, one of my favorite things as just a politically incorrect phrase that I've heard as a joke.
Yeah.
Someone, maybe it was Family Guy or something, but they were talking about Dwayne Johnson, and they go, oh yes, he's racially ambiguous. It's that thing of the girl that plays MJ. It's sort of, it doesn't matter who is what.
Yeah.
It's like, and the guy who's, kind of a dick, he seems sort of Indian or Pakistani or something.
Yeah.
And it's just irrelevant. These characters just are people from places.
Right.
And it's a genuinely, to me, a genuine, like, non-try-hard diversity film, I didn't actually think of it the first time.
Well,
I'll be honest, I didn't.
That's how good it was. I didn't have that realization until like halfway.
It just felt
through
like
the
good
film.
casting.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's and it just gives you that great idea of, you know, and what I meant, by the way, about sort of that racially ambiguous thing, it's surpassed that thing of we need a black kid and
Which could have been the
an
conversation.
Indian kid or this and that. And whereas, totally, I'm sure. Like,
Yeah.
you can't in these big money organizations. But instead of doing that, it feels like they just cast the right people for the roles.
Yeah.
Who, with obviously an intention for them not all to be white.
Yeah, right. I know,
But without filing them either. You know,
For
they
me,
didn't
in
go,
that-
the Asian kid is this, the black kid is this,
and then for me, in the moment when I realized that was, there was a shot of around the school area, and it was just kids, like he was just walking through, like, and then everyone's going to class or whatever it is. And I know this sounds really odd, but I guess it sounds odd because it is odd in this style of film. There was, I'm going to be really culturally insensitive and say, like, you know, the like headscarf, I don't know what it's called, that, you know, Muslim people often wear.
on the other side of the hall there were two Hasidic Jewish boys.
There you go. Like, it wasn't, once again, not paid attention to, not focused on. It wasn't a big
No, it was
deal.
just texture.
It's just texture.
It's
in
just
the
a real
thing.
school in fucking Queens.
And I was like,
which is a
great.
mixing pot. And that's the thing. But that's what you want to see on screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you want to see, in my daily life, I don't walk outside and see white people everywhere.
No.
It's just, in our culture, that's abnormal.
Yeah,
Unless, you know, you live in Queensland. But the,
Ooh.
you, just dissing Queensland, that's right.
Yeah.
Because it's fun.
'cause of
But you know what I mean? Like, in Australia, that's just not normal.
No, it
and
isn't.
and in most westernized, or Western, or westernized as we are, because we don't live in the West, but the countries, that isn't the norm. And so, you know,
it's just
it's
good
really
to
well done. It's really well done because, as you said, it's just not. It feels like no one thought about it.
Yeah, that's right.
They obviously did very, very hard think about it.
And this is what I want it to be like in like 50 years or whatever it is when we can finally do this and not make it a big deal, which is an important milestone. And it takes a long time. It's a really difficult stepping stone for like us as a culture. But I'd love to get to a point in my life before I leave this damn world and be like, yeah, you know what? I remember back in the day where people, like, it had to be a thing. It had to be really pushed at it. And I think it'd be beautiful to see a time where the world is like, no, they're just human beings. They're not, you know, like everyone.
Totally.
Everyone's got a story to tell, and we're just going to put them in front of the screen if they're good at for what they need to do.
That's why we, you know, didn't, in the first episode of season 1 of A Shared House, we didn't like flag that Michael was gay. And quite a few people gave us feedback on that, being
really?
like, I thought that he was gonna hook up with Charlotte and stuff, and I just went, why?
Yeah.
What at any point did that indicate to you that they had a chemistry that would make them hook up? And why did you assume he was straight?
Yeah, that's right.
And it's the thing. It's just people are people, and people can be whatever. And that was sort of that. That was a primary discussion between myself, Georgia, and David. And you know, Georgia being the producer. I know that you know this, but Georgia being the producer and acting in it, and co-creator, and David being the actor that portrayed Michael. And it's that thing of it was a lengthy discussion, because the first thing, as we were talking about who we wanted to sort of mix, you know, Georgia being LGBT, and, you know, she said, I want to get like a gay character in there, that'd be cool, and that kind of stuff. And the first discussion that we had was, cool, but not like a gay character, right? And it's that thing of, we just wanted a character to be gay because we wanted there to be representation, and we wanted there to be, diversity, representation, I guess. But we just didn't want it to be, certainly not in the first episode, a thing. And, you know, there's that awkward conversation in the second episode where it's...
Do you mean on the couch?
Yeah, where it's made a thing about him being gay. But that's the whole point of that conversation.
Yeah.
Is that it's like, why are you even talking about this? This is the fact that you're having the conversation about it being okay to be gay is offensive.
Yeah, yeah.
You should just... Why are you even thinking about it for more than... why you think about it at all? So, yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard, and they totally pulled it off. I'm not saying that we did it successfully, by the way. I'm just saying.
No, I think you guys
it
did.
was something that we were going out to do, but it's a really strange thing to go, okay, so we need to be diverse. We want to be diverse, but we are going to not try to be.
Yeah.
You end up in this mess. It's hard to write. I mean, they did it really well.
Yeah, and I think
But whoever did the casting for that film fucking
smashed it.
deserves an award.
Yeah.
Because not only was it like...
Though Donald Glover as Spider-Man would have been interesting. I don't know if he could have pulled...
Too old!
No,
Too old to begin the training.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even...
He is like 34 or something. 35.
Yeah,
Like,
and he looks it. Like, I mean, he might have been able to play a younger age, but he looks it.
yeah, he's too old.
Yeah, that's a totally good point. Anyway,
But yeah, Black Spider-Man, that'd be cool.
I think that would be cool. I mean, I don't really...
This is a great thing about comic books, though. It's like, you know, when people go, you've taken, you know, fucking racist people and sexist people, you've taken Star Wars away from me. It's like, yeah, they're not going to stop making them, you know.
Yeah.
So it's okay if they make 3 movies where girls are the heroes in Star Wars. You know that there will be more.
That's right.
It's like, stop fucking... and it's the same with this. Like, you could just go, all right, let's make the Black Spider-Man movie. Let's make the Asian Spider-Man movie. But you can't get away from the issue, certainly not in the current climate, that's going to be, you're just trying to be diverse.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, it's why I want Idris Elba to be... I look at Idris Elba and I go, wow, you'd be such a sick James Bond. And people talk about it, and it's just, people will lose their fucking minds if he gets cast as that, because they'll go, you just made him James Bond because he's black. It's like, no, it's because he's like fit, good looking, the right age, and a fucking good actor.
Yeah.
And those are the reasons to put him in. But on top of that, yeah, fuck you, a black guy can be Bond.
Yeah.
Like, that's
And also, I mean, you
see.
saw what happened with Daniel Craig. There was not an uproar, but there was like a really split divide of people were like, oh, but James Bond is like this. And it's like, I didn't want it to James Bond.
Oh, I was totally immature at the time. I didn't want to, I was like, I was more
so
like,
bad.
fuck off, guy who directed Goldeneye. But I was more like, what a dumb decision having a blonde fucking James Bond. That's stupid.
Oh, his eyes, though.
But like, that was just as immature stupidity.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. Like, I mean, there are some
And
films
he
where...
fucking kicks ass, and I love it.
Well, I was going to say, there are some films that, like, you could have just made a different franchise. You didn't have to put the James Bond label. But that wasn't, in my opinion, Daniel Craig's performance in those wasn't a version that you need. I feel like James Bond had needed a refresher. I feel like I was kind of sick of just laughing at James Bond being stupid and racist and sexist. I needed one that was sexist in his own right, I guess, but also like a fucking like machine and intimidating and threatening. Not just someone that it's like, I look good and I sound fantastic.
Oh, totally. I mean, now, particularly on the sexism front, like the misogyny that's inherent to James Bond. The thing that's interesting, the thing I find frustrating is people talk about, get rid of it, don't do that. I'm like, no, explore it.
Yeah.
Look at it. Look at the way that he treats women. And if you, for me, Skyfall is probably the best one in that, particularly because of the M arc that happens in the film. It's that she's an incredibly strong woman, and her arc is very much tied to James Bond.
Yeah.
And it demonstrates to me that he isn't fundamentally a misogynist. He relates to her on a completely human level, and yet at the same time he has that awkward mum replacement because he's an orphan, kind of fucked up stuff happening in his head, but he just has a shit, he treats women like shit, and that's one of my favorite parts of Moneypenny in that film. How she has slept with him in the past, and then they sort of have another rendezvous later in the film, and you know, I think that it's fairly subtle how they explore his behavior affecting others. But yeah, I think, that's my opinion on the James Bond.
We should do one.
Women thing.
I really would love to do one.
Because I think that's an area to dive into, not to pull back. And certainly, like, to me, it's that, it's that providing context of how we can change over time and look at the texture. You should be able to look at the history of James Bond and then find a turning point somewhere. It's like someone once said, this is a thing about context and change, is people had an outcry because early Looney Tunes stuff from the 40s and 50s features disgusting depictions of particularly African Americans. Really foul. And there were calls for them to stop distributing it. And Warner Brothers turned around and went, no, but we're going to put basically disclaimers on them that explain the context in which these were made, because to destroy them or to stop them from being available is to deny that we distributed this.
Yeah.
So instead of that, we are going to continue distributing it, and you can show it to schools.
It's the equivalent of taking Hitler's autobiography and rather than just burning it and letting no one read it, but what happened in Germany where they added context to the book and then released it in Germany.
It's an incredibly important document of a utter drivel from a fucking literary idiot, but that's the truth. It's like he's just an incoherent fuckhead. But that's the thing with James Bond for me. I'd really love to see them explore that.
Let's
anyway,
and
that has to do with Spider-Man.
No, it does, because we're talking about character. We're talking about taking a main role and flipping it, culturally flipping it.
No, I wouldn't say flipping it. Just
the potential
taking it elsewhere or casting it blindly. Is how I would say it. Is just go into a room, shut your eyes, and see if you find a Spider-Man. Turn out the lights and cast a Spider-Man and turn on the lights. And
that's right.
Find out that it was some South American kid.
That's right.
Who knows?
You
just, because there's always another opportunity. I just don't see why they can't do this stuff. Doesn't have to be a 6-film franchise. It can be, we're going to go make this film and then we're going to reset it and do a different story in a different timeline. And that's the opportunity they have in the standalone Star Wars films. It was very frustrating. They immediately went to Han Solo, despite the fact I love that film. I'm so amped for it to come out on Blu-ray. I'm so excited.
Wait, you're talking about the first?
No, Solo.
Solo. Sorry, I was talking about the first film.
No, I didn't like Rogue that much. But Han Solo was surprisingly really entertaining, and that's that thing of stop going to the Skywalker fucking legacy. You can go anywhere and look at anything. It doesn't need to be just an
It also
white
makes it
dude.
cooler. It makes the Skywalker legacy even better if you don't have
It's
to follow it.
exclusive. The
The
galaxy is so massive you can look anywhere, and that's the thing. That's what they need to be doing. We still haven't had a non-white lead in a Star Wars film in terms of singular main character. Of course, we have characters in the sequel trilogy. But anyway,
so that's it really. Thanks for freaking podcasting and talking about Homecoming.
No, that's all right. Thanks for shoving this piece of shit mic in my face.
Hey, your microphone's 3 times more expensive than mine, so
yeah, and still I
give you the better microphone.
40 times less expensive than the last one.
That's true, actually. Not 40, but
whatever.
Yeah, and I won't lie. I put the better microphone in front of me before, and I actually remember when we did that podcast, and I listened to and I actually made a comment later on, being like, "Damn it, your microphone is better." So now we're on more even playing terms. But yeah, thanks for potting.
But bye.
So that's the podcast for today. Stay tuned, as there will be a new podcast released every single Thursday. To keep up to date, don't forget to subscribe using Podbean or wherever you get your podcasts. On this episode, I want to give a special shout out to Josh for coming back yet again. This podcast was produced and edited by me, Piotr Wasilewski, and the music was sourced from the Filmstro website. Till next week, thanks for listening.